Gentlemen of the jury, can all of you see and hear me? Okay, thank you. As I discussed in my voir dire, this is where I give my opening statement on this case. An opening statement in general is what I believe the facts and evidence will show to you as presented throughout the course of this case. Again, this is just my opinion, and I request that you listen intently from the witnesses that go in front of you at the witness stand and the evidence that's produced through them. Now, this case, as you've heard Judge Jackson state, it started on October 18th of 2020, so last year. Now, I'm going to talk about before October 18th of 2020, once I kind of give you a background as to that date specifically, because we're going to have dates before October 18th, and we're going to have dates after October 18th, moving up to February 14th of this year, 2021. So back on October 18th, or maybe the late evening hours or night hours of October 17th of 2020, the victim in this case, Alexa Van Warmer, met up with her on and off again boyfriend at that time, the defendant, Latrell King Jr. On that date, they drove down to Detroit to have dinner. You heard testimony that Alexa drove down the both of them to Detroit to then eat dinner, and that's in fact what they did. On their way home, I think into the early morning hours of October 18th of last year, 2020, during the car ride, the defendant told Alexa that he just consumed some Xanax. Not only did he tell her he consumed some Xanax, but he showed her a bag of suspected Xanax that was in his pocket. Prior to that, they had consumed alcohol during dinner down in Detroit. The reason why that's important is because Alexa will come in here and say, when the defendant was consuming alcohol and or consuming Xanax, he became violent, abusive, controlling, and assaulted her and actually hit her, causing injuries on multiple occasions before October 18th of 2020. So knowing this and knowing that she had to escape the situation, she stopped at a gas station here in town. She was returning home to her address at 4493 Mackinac Road, which is in the township close to the city of Saginaw. She asked the defendant to go inside and pay for gas, to have him leave the car and try to separate herself from him. When the defendant was actually able to leave the car, Alexa zoomed away. Alexa continued at a high rate of speed from the gas station to her home at 4493 Mackinac Road. Prior to actually safely getting home, Ms. Van Warmer was traffic stopped going into her driveway at that residence. She was traffic stopped for her excessive speed and the fact that it was at 4 or 3:30 in the morning. During the traffic stop, it was suspected that Ms. Van Warmer was operating her vehicle under the influence of alcohol. She was arrested. She was taken to jail on that early morning hours of October 18th of 2020. But that doesn't stop what happened on that date there. After Alexa was arrested, the defendant walked from that gas station back to her residence at 4493 Mackinac Road. At that time, and as Ms. Van Warmer will state, the defendant was not living with her. He did not have a key to go inside that residence, and nor did he have permission after she left him at the gas station to go back over to her house, let alone inside of it. You're here, ladies and gentlemen, that 4493 is a duplex. One half is Alexa Van Warmer's residence that she lived by herself. The other half was 4491 Mackinac, which an individual by the name of Tracy Jackson lived in. At roughly 4:30 in the morning, Ms. Jackson, the neighbor, called 911. Ms. Jackson called 911 to advise a black male was knocking on her door and that he was bleeding. At this point in time, police were dispatched to 4491 or 4493 Mackinac Road here in the township. When a multitude of officers arrived, Officer Gibson was one of them. Officer Charles Gibson is and was a member of the Saginaw Township Police Department on that day and still is. You'll hear his testimony where he states he saw blood splattered on the front screen door. on the front door itself, on the front porch, around the side of the home, into the back of the home, and then he saw a shattered window going into 4493 Mackinac Road, the victim's residence. That window was a double-pane window that was shattered completely through. Officer Gibson will testify that he saw blood on the outside of the window, on the glass shards that were still in the window, and on the curtains that were inside of the home. You also see some photographs that there are these big cement blocks behind the residence, and one happened to be right underneath that window. Now, it doesn't stop there. Alexa Van Warmer was contacted while she was in jail by Sergeant Fleming of the Township Police Department. You'll hear testimony from Sergeant Fleming that she inquired to the victim whether anyone should be at her house. Alexa stated, "No one had permission to be in my house at that time. No one." You also hear that Alexa became a little bit hysterical with the sergeant while she was on the phone with her, stating, "I knew this would happen. I knew this would happen when Deputy North, the deputy who arrested her for drunk driving, did not lock up her residence." But what Miss Van Warmer did not know was how the defendant got into the residence on that night. He did not get in by a key or an unlocked door, but he had smashed in that back window over her sink in the kitchen. She indicated there's no one else that this could be besides the defendant, Latrell King. You also hear Officer Gibson state that he believes someone was still in the residence given the blood splatter around the entire complex. During the course of this, and while they were getting permission to go into her residence and getting her garage door opener that was in her car that was towed, Sergeant Fleming was on the PA system of her vehicle announcing to the defendant, "Police, we're here. Please come outside. Please come outside. It's the police." Nothing happened. Eventually, about 30 or so minutes into this investigation, the officers were able to get access to the house by opening the garage from that garage door opener and entering through the kitchen door, which is the door leading into the garage. The defendant was inside the residence at that point in time, seated on the couch. It became very apparent that the defendant broke in through that window and crawled through that window, cutting himself up all over his arms, his face, his legs. He was covered in blood. He tracked blood throughout the kitchen, where he got over into the sink from the window and down onto the floor. He tracked blood all over the living room, on the floor, on his shoes, on his clothes, on the couch that he was found on. He tracked blood to the front door of the residence from the inside of it at this point. And then he continued to track blood to the bathroom of the residence as well. The defendant was taken into custody at that point in time. Ladies and gentlemen, as you'll hear throughout the course of this case, prior to October 18th of 2020, the Saginaw District Court, or the 70th District Court of Saginaw, imposed 2 court orders prior to October 18th that told the defendant he was to have no contact with the victim and vice versa. The no contact orders were put in place because of prior acts of domestic violence that the defendant committed against the victim. It was for her own protection. Defendant didn't care. He was so upset with the victim on that date that he cut himself up numerous times and lost a significant amount of blood just to break into that house, not knowing she was arrested and not knowing she wouldn't return on that night. Why that's important, ladies and gentlemen, is because this was a pattern that the defendant did with this victim. As I stated before, this pattern just didn't start on October 18th of last year. Prior to that, they had started dating roughly in about April of 2020. You heard testimony from Alexa that very soon after they started dating, the defendant became possessive, controlling, and abusive, both physically and mentally. You'll hear that on July 15th, Alexa had to be dragged into the Saginaw Township Police Department to make a report about assault that the defendant committed against her both on the night before, July 14th of last year, in the early morning of July 15th of last year. See, on that date, they were still dating, and Alexa went to go meet up with the defendant in Bridgeport here in Michigan. The defendant assaulted her when she met up with him in Bridgeport. He assaulted her, and she got away from the situation and went home. See, at that point, for a roughly month to two period of time, Miss Van Warmer, the victim, was living with a Denisha Armstrong. Denisha Armstrong was home the late evening hours of July 14th into the early morning hours of July 15th of last year. You'll hear that the victim and the defendant left at a point in time the night of the July 14th. It was odd to Denisha that the defendant showed up later that night by himself, asking, "Where is the victim? Where is Alexa?" The defendant enters the home and tries looking for Alexa, searches the house, but Alexa is not there. So the defendant leaves. And you hear Miss Armstrong testify. She believes she locked every one of the doors in the residence after he left because something she does on a common basis. The next thing Miss Armstrong realized and what woke her up was the victim screaming from the bedroom over. Denisha got up to figure out what was happening, and she saw the defendant on top of the victim in the early morning hours of July 15th. Miss Armstrong did not know how the defendant got into the residence on that day. You'll hear the victim, Miss Van Warmer, state that he assaulted her in the residence after he assaulted her in Bridgeport Township and stole her phone and proceeded to leave the house. As he left the home, Miss Van Warmer followed him. He again pushed her to the ground outside of the residence, and the defendant left when his mom came to pick him up. You'll hear from Miss Armstrong that Alexa did not want to contact the police for any of those assaults between the 14th and 15th of July. Denisha felt like she had to exert a large amount of effort to get Miss Van Warmer to go to the police department to make this report on the 15th. You'll hear that Officer Jared Atha with the township took that report. And Officer Atha observed physical injuries that were on the victim. The victim complained of leg pain and had a small cut on her left foot. Additionally, Ms. Van Warmer stated on July 15th that the victim choked her and put his arms around her neck. Moving forward to August 10th of 2020, even after this abuse, Alexa still goes back and hangs out with the defendant post July 15th. Fast forward to August 10th of last year, 2020. Ms. Van Warmer went to go meet up with the defendant near his home or the residence next to his house, which was South Granger Street here in the city of Saginaw. You'll hear that the defendant contacted the victim to hang out and to come on over. So in the early morning hours of August 10th, Alexa did just that, and she went to go meet up with the defendant near his home. Originally, when Miss Van Warmer got there, it turned into just a conversation. But that conversation eventually turned into an argument, something that's consistent and repetitive and cyclical between the defendant and the victim. Miss Van Warmer got out of the vehicle, after the defendant had entered it where they were talking, to try to calm him down. At this point, the defendant grabbed her and pushed her to the ground, assaulting her and battering her again. It's noted from Officer Ryan Baxter with the city of Saginaw, who took this police report, that there was visible injuries from that assault to the victim. The officer noticed a red mark on her right elbow and a red mark on her left hand, consistent with the assault that the defendant recently committed. Fast forward a little bit further to August 30th of 2020. The pattern, unfortunately, continues where Miss Van Warmer continuously contacts and has communication with the defendant. On this day at roughly 3:30 in the morning, Miss Van Warmer contacts Central Dispatcher 911 to indicate she's hearing noises and sounds outside of her residence at 4493 Mackinac, and would like the police to come check it just to make sure that there was nothing unsafe there. Shortly after that initial call, Ms. Van Wormer calls back Central Dispatch and indicates to them she is driving to the Saginaw Township Police Department to try to get away from the defendant who was following her in his vehicle. At this point in time, the defendant was operating his mother's vehicle, which was a tan Buick Rendezvous. While still on the phone with Central Dispatch, Alexa's describing what the defendant is doing to her while they're driving. Alexa states that the defendant tried to ram her vehicle and steer into her vehicle on multiple occasions when she was trying to get to safety and get to the Saginaw Township Police Department. You'll hear Ms. Van Wormer state that she had to take evasive maneuvers to stop his vehicle from hitting hers. You'll hear a testimony that Ms. Van Wormer indicated and 911 indicated to her to go to a Kroger parking lot to try to get away from the defendant. Unfortunately, Ms. Van Wormer was not able to stay in that Kroger parking lot for police to arrive because the defendant was still following her. Eventually, Ms. Van Wormer was able to get away and return to her residence at 4493 Mackinac. This is when the third call to 911 came in on that early morning hours of August 30th of last year. At that time, Alexa knew it was the defendant, and she was so scared that she locked herself in that interior bathroom that she knew the defendant could not get into. She knew that there was a small window in that bathroom that he could not fit into if he tried to get into it from the outside. She was scared he was going to kill him, and she called 911 again. Hey, it's the defendant. He's at my house. Please send someone. I need this to be investigated. He won't leave me alone. You'll hear testimony from Officer Adam Deal with the Saginaw Township Police Department. He responded to that call and arrived at the residence at 4493 Mackinac at roughly 4:30 in the morning on that date. You'll hear that on approach, the defendant's tan Buick Rendezvous was in the driveway of the victim's residence. The defendant was the only occupant in that vehicle and was in the front passenger seat at that time. You'll see a photograph of the victim from that same date where she had a mark or a bruise above her lip that she indicated she got 2 days prior when the defendant punched her. And it was still on her lip 2 days later on August 30th. Again, continuous, unconsented, terrorizing, threatening contact that the defendant continues to have with the victim. From August 30th, then fast forward to October 18th, which is the beginning date for this case. The reason why those dates are important is because that helps to go to show the unconsented, threatening, violent contact associated with the aggravating stalking charge. Now, it's true, and Ms. Van Wormer will admit to it, that she violated the no contact orders herself when she went to go see the defendant or call him or communicate with him. She wasn't abusing him. She loved him. She wanted to try to change him for the better, and that's why she kept going back. Unfortunately, Ms. Van Wormer could not correct the defendant's abusive behavior. For count two, the aggravated stalking, as you heard the judge state before, there's certain elements I need to provide to you or prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt. First, that the defendant committed 2 or more willful, separate, and non-continuous acts of unconsented contact with the victim. Ladies and gentlemen, I gave you 3 prior incidents before October 18th where that meets that requirement. Second, that the contact would cause a reasonable individual to suffer emotional distress. You get to put yourself in Ms. Van Wormer's situation or your own situation. And the 14 of you as reasonable individuals can think, hey, would this have caused emotional distress, being abused, followed, beat on multiple occasions over a multiple month period of time? Third, that the contact caused the victim to suffer emotional distress. You will hear from the victim that even though she continued communication and contact her after all these assaults, it did affect her. The possessiveness, the controlling, the abuse. Ms. Van Wormer stopped putting on makeup. She stopped taking pictures of herself. She stopped hanging out with other people because the defendant was so controlling she could not do that. I think it's clear that she suffered emotional distress. The fourth element is that the contact would cause a reasonable individual to feel terrorized, frightened, intimidated, threatened, harassed, or molested. I think that's clear, ladies and gentlemen. Finally, the stalking was committed in violation of a court order. Again, you will see that there were 2 court orders put in place leading up to October 18th of 2020. I believe one was from August 31st of 2020, and the second was from September 1st, 2020. So when the defendant went over to her residence on that date after she left him at the gas station and after he broke into the house, he did so to commit another assault, to follow the cyclical and repetitive behavior of his. Every time when he would get upset with the victim, he would assault her. He would follow her. He would go to her residence after she left the situation to impose his authority over her. As it comes to count 1, ladies and gentlemen, the home invasion, second degree, there's 2 parts to the first portion of this crime. That the defendant either broke and entered the home, or he did so without permission. Now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my theory that he violated both of these things. He entered the home without permission, clearly. He cut himself to kingdom come to get into that house and wait for the victim to come home. If you had permission or a key or reasonable access to the house, why would you go to that extent to get inside of the house? But even if you don't agree with me that he didn't have permission to be there, I don't have to show he didn't have permission, even though I'm claiming he didn't. I just have to show he broke into the home. He was found inside the home when police arrived. His injuries were consistent with cutting himself on that window as he broke in, and no one else was found at the home or inside of it on that night. Next element is whether the defendant got his entire body inside. Again, ladies and gentlemen, they found him inside the residence. That is clear. Again, the third element for home invasion, second degree, is again an and or an or. The claim is that when the defendant entered the dwelling, he intended to commit either aggravating stalking and or an assault. It is clear that his pattern and his history led him there because he was upset. He was pissed off. He was left at that gas station on that night. And because of it, he was going to go to that residence and show the victim who was boss. I'm not claiming he assaulted her on that night. She was never there when he was there. But the assault doesn't have to have taken place. He just had to intend for the assault to take place. And that's why those prior bad acts before October 18th are so important in this case. Additionally, his acts in and of himself meet all the elements of ag stalking. Whether he intended to or not, he committed ag stalking, and in doing so, he broke into that house while committing that felony. Finally, ladies and gentlemen, the third count in this case. After October 18th of 2020, you'll hear testimony both from the victim and other detectives and officers on this case about the continuous contact that the defendant had with the victim after he was arrested on October 18th. Not only was there 2 outstanding no contact orders before the 18th, but he got another no contact order put into place for the case that we're here in court today. The contact did not stop there. As early as October 24th, he starts to message and text the victim. Again, as you'll see, it's a cyclical pattern with the defendant. He texts her, "I'm sorry, forgive me, I'm sorry. Don't come to court because I'm going to get in trouble if you come to court. Please don't send me to prison. Please don't violate me. Talk to the prosecutor. I'm going to kill myself. I'm threatening to kill myself. Don't come to court. I'm sorry. Rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, all the way up to February 14th of this year, 2021. Now, ladies and gentlemen, as you've heard, the elements with interfering with a witness on a criminal case. The first element is that the victim was an individual who was testifying or going to testify or going to provide information at an ongoing or future official proceeding. It's clear as day. You're going to hear victim come in and testify for this case today. There was also other outstanding cases where the victim was the same victim in charged criminal counts against the same defendant. The second element of interfering with a witness in a criminal case is that the defendant impeded, interfered with, prevented, or obstructed the victim from attending, testifying, or provided information. Or, again, here's a good or tried to impede, tried to interfere, tried to prevent, tried to obstruct the victim. It does not matter whether his attempts actually obstructed or interfered with her coming in to testify. It's that he tried to do that. Again, it does not matter whether the official proceeding took place, as long as the defendant knew or had reason to know that Alexa could be called as a witness at the proceeding. It's clear as day in all these communications. He's indicating these court cases and the fact that they're being set for hearings at the courthouse. Third, that the defendant intended to impede, interfere with, prevent, or obstruct the victim from attending, testifying, or providing information at the official proceeding. He is begging her and pleading with her not to show up on tens, if not hundreds, of different occasions between October 18th and February 14th of this year. Each one of those times where he attempts to interfere with her coming in to prosecute, that's a violation of that law. I don't have to prove that it was continuous from October 18th to February 14th. I just have to show one time. But what's important, ladies and gentlemen, it wasn't just one time. It was numerous, if not hundreds of times he attempted to interfere, obstruct, or try to prevent her from coming in to testify against him. And as you'll hear, ladies and gentlemen, home invasion of the second degree carries a maximum possible punishment of more than 10 years in prison. Again, ladies and gentlemen, I implore you to listen to the evidence and the witnesses that are going to be in front of you in that stand as this case proceeds. Alexa did commit some wrongs by continuing the contact, but that doesn't justify the abuse she suffered by trying to help the defendant. Because all the elements will be shown beyond a reasonable doubt for each of the three counts, I ask you to use your common sense, use everything that you get to see as evidence in this case, and come back guilty as charged against the defendant on all three counts. Thank you.
Mr. Crawford, do you wish to opening statement or reserve?
I would forget my
All right.
Good afternoon, once again. Now, after listening to that opening argument by the prosecution, it's fair to assume that they want you to believe that Latrell King is a monster. They want you to believe that he's a woman beater, he's an abuser, he's a stalker, he's this, he's that. But let me assure you, when we make it through all the evidence in this case, you're going to learn that that couldn't be any further from the truth. The prosecution's case in general is a reach of great proportions, and the evidence will prove that they're truly making something out of nothing here. And they're ultimately trying to divert your attention from the real issues on why you're here. The case that you're here to decide on, the charges, home invasion, second degree, aggravated stalking, interference with the witness. Domestic violence is not a charge in this case, but that's what they want to continue to focus on. He spent nearly half of his opening argument talking about domestic violence, July 15th, August the 10th. None of that matters. We're here to decide what happened on October the 18th. That's where these charges are coming from. We're focused on October the 18th. And based on these charges, you think Latrell, he's some type of peeping Tom. looking through the window, hiding in the bed, showing up to her job, harassing her. No, not even close. And the charges in this case that you're here to decide on, once again, October 18th, the day before, which is Sweetest Day. And on this day, you will learn from the evidence that's presented, Alexis Van Wormer drove her vehicle to Latrell King's house, picked him up, and they drove all the way to the dinner that they had reservations for in Detroit. 2 hours from Saginaw to Detroit. They sat down, they had a nice dinner, and unfortunately, during the course of that dinner, Alexis had a little bit too much to drink, way too much. By the grace of God, she ends up making it back to Saginaw. But while they're coming back to Saginaw, there is an argument. And unlike what the prosecution says, where they're talking about all this violence, Alexa has testified previously that while they're coming back, there are no assaults. He's not threatening her. She didn't feel that her life was in danger, and she'll tell you that specifically. But they get into something. And she's not going to be truthful about it, but I can tell you, because you can go through her actions and we're going to go through her text messages. She gets mad at Latrell about his infidelities. And that's what a lot of this comes down to. Latrell cheating. Latrell does this. Latrell does that. She gets upset with him. He goes into the gas station to pay for some gas, and she floors it out of there. Now, one thing that the prosecution forgot to tell you is that when she left him at the gas station, she had his cell phone and she had his keys. This is at 3 o'clock in the morning. There's no pay phones for him to go and call anybody to pick him up. Can't call a taxi, doesn't have a phone. He can't call an Uber. And she will tell you the plan the entire night. Go to Detroit, come back to her house like they always do, spend the night. And she left him. She didn't say anything to him. She just sped off. And so Latrell is out, left at the gas station, 3:30 in the morning, and he's walking back to her place. Now, we don't know what happened, but something happened to Latrell while he's walking back to her house, and he becomes disoriented. And as the prosecution noted, Ms. Jackson will come in, and she will testify that Latrell knocks on her door. He knocks on the wrong door, and she calls the police. He's bloody. He's disoriented. From there, yes, the evidence will show he does go into Alexa's house, lets himself in. And from there, the police eventually come. He's not rummaging the place. He's not trying to steal anything. He's not in there screaming, Alexa, Alexa. He's on the couch sleep. And when they come in, he complies with each and every single one of their commands. Now, once again, no phone, no keys. She has both of those, and she leaves him there. How is he supposed to know that she gets arrested for drunk driving? He's walking thinking she's going to come back and pick him up, but she never does. Now, for the home invasion charge, it's more than just entering the home. The prosecution has to prove beyond a reasonable doubt that he broke into her home and he had the specific intent to commit the offense of aggravated assault or an assault. He didn't have any intent to stalk or assault her. Alexis didn't communicate anything to him when she left him at the gas station. His head is busted open. He's disoriented. He wants to go to sleep, or at least get his phone back so we can call an Uber to take him home. That's the case. That's October 18th in the nutshell. Now, the prosecution, as they've mentioned on their opening, they're going to introduce all of this baseless and unrelated allegations about domestic violence between the two. And they're going to tell you that she's so scared of him. They're going to throw a bunch of stuff at the wall and hope that something sticks. But the only reason they're doing this is because they're trying to shore up the deficiencies in their own case revolving around October the 18th. So they're trying to confuse you on the real issues and mislead you while you're here. This is not a case about domestic violence. This is a case involving allegations of home invasion, aggravated stalking, and interference with the witness. Now, when we really begin to peel back the layers, you're going to learn what this case is really all about. And it's about Alexa Van Wormer. She's not afraid of Latrell. He's not stalking her. One of the elements for stalking is unconsented contact. The prosecution wants you to believe that it was unconsented contact when she went and picked him up and drove him to Detroit. Unconsented contact when they sat down for dinner 4 feet across from each other and engaged in the full, complete dinner and had a romantic evening. No. And it's also unconsented when they plan to leave from the dinner and come back to her house and spend the night. No, that's not unconsented. That's not stalking. That's two consenting adults who know exactly what they're doing. Yes, they have a sick and twisted relationship. They were official boyfriends and girlfriends for almost a year. He stayed at her home for several months. Then he moved out and they continued on this relationship, on and off. Spend the night here. She'll spend the night at his place. They argue, they break up, they get back together. And you'll even see it through their text messages. I hate you, I hate you, I hate you. A couple of hours later, oh, I love you so much. I miss you, I need you. Of course, this isn't a relationship that a parent would approve of for their child, but this is their relationship. And now she's trying to put a front on about everything because she's mad and upset at Latrell for cheating and lying. She's sick of it. And now she's using the court system to her advantage. Now, Alexa Van Warmer is officially out for blood. At its core, this case is about motivation, deception, and manipulation. All of this, everything that we're here dealing with, all this prior bad acts that are unproven and dismissed, I might add, it's all a charade. And you're going to know it's a charade by Alexa Van Warmer's own actions. I'm scared of Latrell. He's this, he's that. I don't want him. He's bothering me. He's stalking me. Please. You're going to see text messages from her after October the 18th, where she's saying, Latrell, I love you so much. I want to start a family with you. I want to have a baby by you this year, and we can paint the baby's walls pink or blue. I love you, Daddy. You're my king. No contact order? Yes. There was one in place that a judge imposed. It's a standard condition in these type of cases. But Alexa herself did not want it enforced. And you will know that she didn't want it enforced, not only by her actions, but also by her words in her text messages, talking directly to Latrell about how the no contact order doesn't matter. Her own words. And furthermore, there was a no contact order in place on October the 18th. Once again, she got in her car, she drove to pick him up, and go to dinner with him. Her choice. But the prosecution wants you to believe that that's unconsented contact. She loved him. She wanted to have a baby by him. She was infatuated with him. They wanted to continue their relationship. Sick, twisted, yes. But once again, that's their relationship. And you're also going to see text messages from her that show her other side. The side when she gets mad. The side that will illustrate why we're all here. Because when Alexa gets mad, when Latrell cheats, she goes to the police. Latrell had a very serious problem with being honest and open in his relationship. He lied to her. He embarrassed her. And for that, that's why we're here. For that, she continues to call the police. And she's playing both sides. You will see in her text messages, it's just not normal what she's doing. Now, as I mentioned earlier, there was a no contact order in place that a judge mandated. This was not requested by Alexa. It's automatically imposed. But neither Alexa nor Latrell cared too much for this. And at the jail, inmates are given these iPad-type devices, and you're able to text and send messages. You will see through the course of this trial all the messages that were sent between Alexa and Latrell. You will be able to see exactly what they're talking about. And through those text messages, you will see there's no way in the world that she's scared of Latrell King. Now, the prosecution charged Latrell with interfering with the witness. And I'm not here to confuse you, and I'm not here to mislead you on the evidence. I'm going to tell you straight. Latrell King is going to be guilty of interfering with the witness. The evidence will show that. But that's the only thing that he'll be guilty of in this case. Yes, he's alone, he's in jail, he's scared, he's by himself, he's texting her things that he shouldn't have said. And for that, they have a basis for interfering with the witness. He shouldn't have done it. He didn't need to do it, but he did it. And once again, I'm here to tell it to you just like how it is. He's guilty of that offense, but this home invasion, aggravated stalking, not based on the evidence that they're going to present. The truth is within the details. No matter how they try to spin this, they can't get around Alexa Van Warmer's own actions. She'll tell the police one thing, but then she'll go out and do the exact opposite. And this is a trap that the prosecution has clearly fallen into. Charges in this case that we're here to decide on: home invasion second, aggravated stalking, interference with the witness. All this other stuff that they want to talk about, it's irrelevant. Has absolutely nothing to do with why you're here. The domestic violence cases, guess what? They were all dismissed. You want to know why they were dismissed? Because Alexa Van Warmer got on the stand and said that nothing happened. But now the prosecution wants to say, you know what, don't believe that testimony. She was being persuaded. She didn't really mean it. Don't mind that she committed perjury. But listen to what she has to say here today, because today, now she's not lying. No, can't have it both ways. Everything the prosecution is putting forth that's not a part of October 17th or October the 18th is a diversion, okay? No matter how you cut it, it's completely irrelevant. It means nothing, and it absolutely has no bearing on what happened on October the 17th, going into the early morning hours of October the 18th. As we go through this case, I ask that you not get caught in their trap of irrelevant and useless evidence. Home invasion, aggravated stalking, interference with the witness. It's their burden. And they're not going to be able to reach that burden because they're relying on Alexa and her actions show the exact opposite of what they're trying to prove. The truth is always within the details. Motivation, deception, manipulation. At the conclusion of this trial, I ask that you find my client, Latrell King, not guilty of home invasion in the second degree and aggravated stalking. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, and now it's 1:45. I promised you we'd be out by 2:30, so we're ahead of that. It's been a long day for you all. I'm going to allow you to leave, break for the afternoon. Caution you once again not to discuss the case among yourselves, nor with anyone else, or listen to, read, or watch the news reports should there be any concerning this trial. Have a pleasant evening. We'll see you back tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. All right? You can be seated. You can be seated. The record should reflect the jury is not present at this time. Anything for the record, Mr. Sauter?
No, Your Honor.
Mr. Crawford?
No, Your Honor.
And Mr. Sauter, tomorrow you will have your witnesses lined up and ready to go for the remainder of the day, I trust.
Yes, Judge.
All right, we'll stand in recess until 9 a.m., gentlemen. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.